Hello everyone, I'm Joe from Scarecrow Joe's Studio. If you are a returning subscriber, welcome back. If you're new to the channel, welcome. And you guys that are not new to the channel are probably wondering what the heck is going on. You were in like the middle of the paper mache owl tutorial, and this doesn't look like a continuation from that. You're absolutely right. For those of you who are new to the channel, if you're interested in learning how to make an owl from paper mache, I do have the first two parts uploaded onto the channel, so check those out. For those of you who are not interested in creating anything like an owl, and maybe you're a little bit more interested in creating something a little bit more on the evil side of things, in particularly the folklore surrounding Christmas. So this is the first segment on paper mache busts, and the bust that I'm going to be creating is going to be Krampus. So I'm going to be making a Krampus bust, and this is the very first segment. There's a lot going on right now in the studio. We have a lot of tutorials that we're filming and creating for you. And so in between the drying time on the paper mache owl sculpture that we are currently involved in and creating the tutorials for that, we thought it would be a good idea to go ahead and in between that time and creating other projects and working on other stuff in the studio to get started on this tutorial. We are in the month of November and Christmas is right around the corner. Now, a couple of weeks ago, we uploaded a video on the upcoming projects that we have in mind and some upcoming tutorials for the rest of the fall season and into winter and into the spring. This was on our list to create a bust and show you how to make a bust out of paper mache. I have chosen Krampus just because it's that time of year and I really like the folklore surrounding it. If you are not familiar with Krampus, or in the United States here, we pronounce it Krampus. So if you are not familiar with the folklore, Google it. Lots of things are going to come up. And then, of course, movies that are based on the character. The Krampus movie that was filmed and released in 2015, which is 10 years ago, is still a really great one. The character Krampus in that movie is phenomenal. So I'm going to create a Krampus bust pretty much surrounding that character. Before I get into all that and the tools and materials, I wanted to give you a look at this bust here. This could be considered a Krampus. Krampus is basically a demon. He's got horns. He usually has some kind of facial hair and some kind of fur, snarling teeth, menacing eyes. Not interested in creating something so scary or so evil? You like more fantasy-based art or something else, maybe nature-based art? Don't worry about that. The tools, techniques, and materials that I'm going to show you while creating these busts, you could take those same techniques, tools, and materials and create any kind of a bust that you want. I'm going to show you how to make horns. I'm going to show you how to make teeth. I'm going to show you what to do for eyes, how to insert and incorporate hair or fur. So you could use those techniques and those materials in any kind of a bust creature that you want to create. Let me go over some of the supplies that you will need. If you wanted to create this and not have it be so technically armature driven, you could go ahead and purchase one of these. This is just a styrofoam head. I do suggest that if you do, this is a female version of this that I'm going to be using because this is what I have on hand. If you don't have one on hand and you want to take this route, instead of trying to create the armature for the head and the bust itself, this is a much faster and easier way to go. These are found relatively cheap online. If you do get one, I suggest that you get the male version and not the female version. You're going to have a little bit more to work with. If you do have one of these on hand that happens to be a female styrofoam head, don't worry about that. I'm going to show you what you could do, because we're really going to dig into this face. We're going to attach some horns. So it's going to change this form considerably. And either one, you're going to need some sort of a platform. I really suggest that you get or use a piece of scrap wood. And you want it to be at least 1/2 inch thick. Doesn't really need to be very big. It just needs to be big enough so that your armature will fit on there and you have some room around it, because we are going to be building out onto the shoulders, onto the back, and onto the front, and we're going to need some room here on our platform. So if you don't have some scrap wood, you could purchase online. You could get different shapes of wood in different diameters and in different width or thickness. A lot of them are very, very cheap and very, very thin, but you could get a pack of them for like 12 of them, pretty cheap. You could go ahead and do that, but what you will need to do is either sandwich a piece of styrofoam in between two of them so that you have a thicker base, or just use some wood glue or some super glue, that kind of thing, and glue them together so that you have enough thickness so that it will support your created bust. Now, depending on the type of bust that you're creating, your character, of course, there's a variety of other materials that you will want to have at your disposal. I dug deep into my tub of miscellaneous materials that I have on hand from various other projects and from things that people have given me. So some of the things that I have are fur. So just pieces of fur, such as this. I use this piece of fur here on this character for his beard, and some of the fur around his neck and the top of his head. And then some of this red, so this is kind of a felt material. This is like a dollar store stocking, Christmas stocking, that I can cut apart and use the fabric for. So various types of that kind of material that I have here. Here's another thing. This came, this is the white part that came from a Santa hat that could possibly be used. And then, pieces of hair that I could use and incorporate. This is another piece of fur. But pieces of hair, this is from like a, Halloween wig. So if you have an old Halloween wig and you want to incorporate some hair, you can definitely use that. You can also use like an old sheet. If you don't have any kind of other fabric on hand and you don't have the ability to go out and source it, you could use an old sheet. The older and thinner, the better. You can cut that apart and you can use that as your fabric. I'm going to be incorporating some fabric and some fur and some other things into my Krampus bust for part of his kind of costuming around the bust area. And he's probably going to be wearing a hood where his horns actually protrude out of. So check out the thrift stores, Dollar Tree, dollar stores, Dollar General, anything like that. Pick up some cheap stuff if you don't already have it on hand and you expect that you're going to be using these types of things. Thermal plastic pellets. So very interesting. I have never used these before. They're basically, you melt them in some hot water and then they start to melt, and then you can form them in whatever shape you want them to be formed in. You can use this to create eyeballs. These are actual just little glass beads in his eyes that were painted this color. But you can use this stuff to create the eyeballs. They're going to be like a clear color. So it gives you a lot of options for painting. You could also use them to create teeth with. So I'm going to be trying that out. Most of the time for teeth, I use polymer clay and I sculpt out the teeth and I insert them. But I'm going to try out the thermoplastic pellets here. You can get these cheap, and for man, there's a lot of these pellets in here. I'll probably never go through them in years and years and years. So you can get them cheap if you want to try it along with me. Some of the other common tools and materials: scissors, a blade of some sort, like a utility blade, a ruler, cardboard. You're going to need corrugated cardboard, thin flexible cardboard. You're going to need some masking tape. You're going to need hot glue gun, aluminum foil, newspaper, and then when we get close to it, you're going to need some paper mache paste and some paper mache clay. But on that note, let's dive into creating some of the armature. Now, before I do get started, I wanted to talk about this piece of wood that I have here on hand. This piece of wood used to be like a cheese cutting display thing. It had some kind of like board that went in here, or a plate that went in here, and then 2 serving cheese cutting and a serving utensil, which was donated to me. So I have 3 of these. So I figured it's the right thickness or width. It's nice and solid. The only problem is that it has a varnish or some sort of a finish on it. And I'm a little concerned that my head armature, or the foam here, won't adhere it with this glossy surface. So I have a piece of sandpaper here, and I'm going to use that piece of sandpaper. I think this is like a medium grit sandpaper. I just want to lightly sand a little bit. Alright, I think that just using that little bit of precaution and sanding that surface area is really going to help secure things onto this piece of wood. The other thing that I have on hand is a scrap piece of styrofoam. And I need to trim this down because it's overhanging on this board, so I am going to go ahead and trim down the areas. I wanted a little more height in my bust so that I could create more surface area to apply and build out, bulk out, like a shoulder type of an area. I went ahead and trimmed those areas, so now when I do go to adhere this onto my piece of wood here, it's not hanging over the edges. I dislike using styrofoam, especially packing boxes, you know, that come in with styrofoam. It's the beaded styrofoam, so when you cut it, you got these little styrofoam pieces, like these little balls, and it gets everywhere. So I absolutely hate working with it, but I always end up getting, you know, boxes of things, and some of the materials need to be cushioned, and so they come with styrofoam. I figure, you know, I keep the stuff and figure I'm going to use it, incorporate it into some art instead of just tossing it into a landfill. Please don't go out and buy styrofoam like this. If you don't have anything and you want to make your armature a little taller without adding a lot of weight to it, if you don't have the styrofoam or a scrap piece of styrofoam, you can take some corrugated cardboard and glue some pieces of corrugated cardboard together to the thickness that you want, and then you could use that instead of using a piece of styrofoam. Before I continue, because again, I hate this, it's a mess, I'm going to take some masking tape and I'm going to tape along all the edges so that it doesn't continue to shed and get everywhere in my studio. Okay, that's all taped off. Now this next step, I'm not even sure it's necessary, but I'm going to go ahead and do it as an extra precaution. I've taken a piece of newspaper here. I'm going to go ahead and use my masking tape and tape this on to this piece of styrofoam here. And the reason I'm going to do that, because I'm going to use some adhesive, And I'm not sure the adhesive will directly bond to the styrofoam and the wood if I just try to adhere it on like that. So that's why I'm using the piece of newspaper in hopes that it'll create a little bit of a barrier and the newspaper will stick on there. But first things first, I'm going to go ahead and tape this onto this with some masking tape. All right, that piece of newspaper is attached with masking tape to one side of my styrofoam. The adhesive that I'm going to use, that will hopefully work to secure this to my wooden base, is the spray adhesive. It is 3M brand Super 77 multi-purpose adhesive. So it's supposed to bond all kinds of stuff, including cardboard, plastics, foil. So we'll see if it's going to adhere. It should adhere to the newspaper. Not sure if it would adhere or even eat through the styrofoam itself. That's why the precaution with the piece of newspaper there. Now, because this is an aerosol and it's probably pretty stinky, I'm going to take this outside and spray the glue onto this, spray a little glue onto this, and then attach it. Alright, so this 3M brand Super 77 spray adhesive worked great for this. It's not going anywhere. It's on there really well. If you're using any kind of spray adhesive like this, make sure that you are reading the instructions on the label as far as drying time. Some of them is like, you spray it on and then you wait like 30 seconds to a minute and then glue or make contact with whatever it is you're trying to glue together. So that is important. Make sure you read the instructions. But highly recommend this. Worked out great. Let me turn this around. And you're probably like, whoa, what's going on there? Well, I put some marks in here around the eyes, the nose, and the mouth with a black Sharpie. This particular foam head is a female foam head model. In the eyes, you can probably see where, these are where they had the eyes. And so the forehead, like this massive forehead up here, and the eyes were down here. So on my sculpture, I'm going to raise the eyes. So where they had the top of the eyes here, that's going to be the bottom of where my eyes are going to start. Now when I do the sculpting, it's not necessarily going to retain this shape. These markings are basically giving me a reference point on where I'm going to go in and actually cut into these areas to build upon with my clay. And also I marked around the nose and the mouth. I'm going to open up this mouth area, so I'm going to cut into this mouth area. And this doesn't leave me very much chin down here, is probably what you're thinking, and you're right, but that doesn't matter because I'm going to bulk all of this area up with clay when I start sculpting it. And the nose, I don't know if I'm going to cut too much off of the nose. I might, maybe a little bit like right here, because if I'm opening up this mouth area, I don't want the nose to be right underneath there, so I'm probably going to cut that off. I'm not going to cut in and remove all of the nose, the little bit of the nose that's protruding there. I'm going to leave that. That's fine, because I can build upon that when I get to my sculpting with the clay. The shape of the eyes is not important, really. Where I have here, I'm just going to cut in there. When I start sculpting, I'm going to, the shape will change with the clay. So that's what I'm going to do next. I'm going to go ahead and cut into these areas and remove a lot of this. Okay, I have all of that cut out for eye sockets and the mouth. Turn it this way so you can see about the depth that I have in there. So I have enough depth to work with for my eyeballs, and in the mouth I have enough depth in there that I've removed the chunks of foam out of there to insert a tongue and some teeth or whatever else that I want to do. I removed a little bit of that lower nose here so I could bring up a little bit of an upper lip. My rule of thumb is for the eyes, as far as how deep I want them. I cut a ping pong ball in half. It's just a cheap ping pong ball. And if I can get a ping pong ball in there, like so, where it's not sticking out very far, then I know that I have the depth to insert some eyes, because I'm not going to use a ping pong ball. But a ping pong ball for me, or half of one, is a really good reference on the diameter of my eye opening, because that amount of space is going to allow me room to create my own eyes for the eyeballs and really sink them in there so that it has a lot of depth. With the mouth, depends on, if you're going to put a tongue inside the mouth, then you're going to want some depth. This is probably, I don't know, 1.5 inches to 1 3/4 deep that I carved into. And I got styrofoam everywhere. I've already expressed how much I hate working with this stuff, but this really is the easiest way, just using one of these heads. Not going to do anything with the ears. The ears are fine, and in fact, it gives me a really good base on which to create my own ears and attach them, and I'll just use these areas. The only other thing that I want to do to prepare this armature for sculpt is I want to bulk up these areas in the shoulder. So what I'm going to do, very, very simple. I have a bunch of newspaper here, and I'm just sort of going to ball up some newspaper, kind of flatten it out to sort of form the shape around the shoulders. So that's pretty good. So that was one sheet, and if you want it to be symmetrical, do both sides at the same time. So that was pretty good. So in this instance, I'm just going to go ahead and just going to kind of wrap. I don't need to wrap the whole thing, but so that it stays in place. That's where I'm going to attach it. So I'm going to take some more of my tape. This is going to give me more of a form and more of a base area in which to apply clay. I'm not going to apply clay directly to this armature as it is. I'm going to strip mache it. But with the masking tape, it just allows me to get in there and bulk up my armature a little bit more. I'm going to do the same with this side, and then I might bulk up a little bit more in here. Alright, so I took the time to bulk up kind of the chest and shoulder areas a little bit with some newspaper, and then I secured it with masking tape. You could apply and bulk it up as big as you desire. You can add more to the neck area, you can add more to the chest area, I didn't really do very much on the back because my character here is going to be wearing like a cloak, a hooded cloak. Not going to see the back. You will see the front and maybe some of the sides here. So depending on what type of character you're going for, if the back is going to be really sculpted out with a lot of detail and showing, then I would apply more. I would bulk out the back a little bit more. But on this particular sculpture for my Krampus, I'm not going to worry about it. It's not completely even. Like, you know, one side might be a little bulkier than the other. Don't worry about that. You don't need to spend a ton of time bulking it out. The purpose of this is to just give it a little bit more structure and surface area so that when you go to actually apply the clay and start sculpting out, you won't have to apply so much more clay. So just imagine for a second that if, you know, I did not put and bulk this out and just left it flat like it was. I'm going to strip mache this, but applying the clay, if I wanted it bulked out, the only thing that I have to do that is clay. So I'm going to use a lot more clay if I didn't do this. So it really helps with keeping your sculpture light and using less clay by just bulking out the armature. Okay, so what I'm going to do next and off camera is I'm going to apply at least 2 layers of strip mache onto the shoulder, the chest area where I applied and bulked up with the newspaper. At least 2 layers of strip mache. On the rest of it, all I need is 1 layer of strip mache. The reason that I'm going to go ahead and put the strip mache on the whole thing, I just find that with paper mache clay, you know, it just sticks better if something is strip mached with newspaper. It will stick to the foam, but not as well. And I don't like to struggle. So that's why I'm going to go ahead and put just 1 layer and just a couple of layers. Just kind of smooth out this area. And then I'll let this dry and I'll be ready to go with the next step. In the next step, which is going to be part 2 of this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to make the horns. So we'll concentrate on the horns. And we're going to start sculpting out, laying on some clay, building up our sculpture. So horns and laying on clay is going to be the next segment. That's going to be part 2. For those of you that are waiting for the part 3 of the owl, paper mache owl tutorial, that's going to be coming your way within the next few days here. I'm in the process of filming that and doing some editing, so that's going to be coming up for you. So don't worry, I didn't forget about that. But that's a wrap on the Krampus bust part 1 tutorial. And part 2 is going to be coming up. Got a lot of other projects in mind. So if you haven't subscribed, again, hit the subscribe button. Turn on notifications so that you know when everything is uploaded. Thank you for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.